All right, what's going on, everybody? Keith Niebuhr with Gators Online to talk some Florida Gators football recruiting, and we got a special guest today, and hopefully he's going to be joining us a lot. He's On3's national scout, Cody Bellaire. And Cody, I never pronounced your last name right. Did I get it right that time?
You nailed it. You're great, Keith. You're good.
What a genius I am. All right, so look, Florida has just signed, high schools and junior college guys, the number 10 class in the country. Good class, Cody. 91.33 average player rating, 90 kind of being the usual cutoff for 4-star. So it's a good, solid group, 2 5-stars in the On3 industry rankings, 12 4-stars. And that average player rating, I think, is 6th best in the country. So when you take the overall ranking, it's 10th best, which is a measure of quality and quantity. But when you just go quality, it's 6th best. Cody, just your general thoughts on Florida's recruiting class.
Yeah, man, I think it's deep. That's the word that I would say describes this group. And like you mentioned, right, the average rating, that plays a big factor in it. There's a ton of 4-stars in this group. There's a ton of guys that have long-term upside. There's a ton of guys that have high floors that can come in and make an instant impact. Honestly, if you're signing top 10 classes across the country and you're stacking those classes on top of each other, you have a chance to succeed on the football field. And honestly, that's what it's about. It's about raising the floor of every position group, and it's about adding talent that can go on and play at the next level. And I think Florida's done that in this 2024 group.
All right, Cody, you can't talk about the Florida Gators class without talking about DJ Lagway, number 2 overall recruit in the country.
The crown jewel. The crown jewel, right?
Number 2 overall in the country for us. Number 1 quarterback. Like people have said, hey, maybe it wasn't the strongest quarterback class around, but that's not to give him a backhanded compliment. He was dominant. He had an unbelievable senior year. He'd be a 5-star any year. The guy's special, at least in my opinion. I mean, we don't know what he's going to become because he's got to go out and do it. But from an evaluation standpoint, and there's really nothing to not like, essentially. But again,
right.
I'm a casual observer. I cover the University of Florida, so I'm going to be a little bit biased toward Florida recruits just subconsciously. You're an impartial subject. What do you like about DJ Lagway's game the most?
Yeah, man, I think the thing about DJ, and I want to start this with back in 2021, I was working at LSU at the time, and we had him come for a game when he was a sophomore. It was actually the Auburn game when Bo Nix flipped the switch and made that crazy scramble and throw for a touchdown in the back of the end zone, and Auburn ended up winning. But, the thing that was so impressive about him, even back then was the human being. As a 15 and 16-year-old kid, you were like, whoa, this cat is sharp. He knows ball. He's courteous. He's polite. He shook everybody's hand. He got everybody's names. And I remember after that game, all the personnel and recruiting cats went back in the office, and there's 50 other kids or whatever on campus that you've been talking to all day. And we got back and sat down in our office and we're like, hey, that sophomore from Willis was pretty damn impressive, right? And I think that's part of the story that people take for granted, especially as evaluators, right? You can almost get caught up in taking the human being out of the equation and get lost in the testing and the data and the film and all that stuff. But especially at the QB position, what's between the ears matters, obviously, right? But I just wanted to touch on that because it was very impactful, even back then for me in 2021 when I met him, and even more so after hearing different sources confirm that same inclination that we had back then. And as he's grown up and continued on throughout this process, everyone continues to echo that same sentiment. So that's been pretty cool to see. And, when we look at the football part of things, there's a ton of stuff to like, right? The athlete, the physical specimen is phenomenal. He's a legit 6'3", 230 pounds, ran a laser 4.6 during the spring prior to his senior year. I mean, he's a multi-sport athlete. He grew up playing basketball and baseball. He's got a really strong baseball background, right? He's a guy that was sitting in the upper 80s as a freshman in high school on his fastball, right? So the athletic profile for the position, especially as a quarterback, is about as impressive as it gets for a high school kid. As for his ability as a passer, I think the first thing that jumps out is the rocket that's attached to his shoulder, right? This is a guy that can drive the football about as good as anybody in the country. He can push the ball vertically. He can fit the ball in tight windows. He can throw it off platform. That baseball background shows up, especially when you start to see him throw it from those multiple arm angles. But if I were to nitpick, Keith, and I mean it, it's nitpicking, right? There's some elongation to his motion. It can be a little draggy, and you would love for him to tighten that up a bit. And I think that's when you start to see the consistency in his accuracy improving, and you'll start to see him deliver more catchable footballs. And I think you saw some of that progress come from his junior year to his senior year. He was a 67% completion guy as a junior, which is great. Don't get me wrong. But he even upped his game and got it to 72% as a senior. And I think part of that is cleaning up the motion and with that, delivering more catchable balls. But yeah, man, he's made some unbelievable strides in his game throughout his high school career. And I think the sky's the limit for him at the next level.
Cody, it seemed like a lot of schools had him the top of their board, man. Clemson,
Sure.
Southern Cal. Were you surprised at all that those schools, some of those schools, kind of just sniffed around late just in case? I mean, is he that kind of guy? Is he the dude? Is he that good?
Yeah, I think he is. And I think it's one of those tough deals where, ironically, I think the evaluators and the guys in the ranking side had the better deal out of it compared to coaches, because a lot of staffs, you have to get your guy and you have to get your guy early, right? And you're sort of betting on long-term projection and upside and hoping that guy, your guy basically that you basically bought into as a junior, pans out into a senior year. And so I think there were teams that had reservations on Lagway based off of the junior tape and sort of some of those inconsistencies that I was touching on with ball placement and accuracy. And you're sort of said, well, he's got the physical tools. He has the athletic profile. The arm talent's there. How accurate is he? How consistent is he? Is this a guy that's going to like really drive down the field and make the offense move? And fortunately for Florida, and I think for Billy Napier and his staff, they bet on the right horse. You know what I mean? I think ultimately the things you saw as a senior from Lagway, he progressed in almost every aspect of his game. And that led to an honestly historic year for Willis and himself as a quarterback.
So I just want to get this straight. Even though he had all the physical tools, he wasn't necessarily, let's say 16 months ago, a no-brainer, top of the board, number one guy.
100%.
Okay, what does that say about Billy Napier and offensive analyst Ryan O'Hara, who for all intents and purposes is Florida's quarterback coach and evaluator? What does it say about those two guys' ability to recognize that kind of thing early?
Yeah, I mean, kudos to them, right? You were willing to bet and it hit. And I think that's something that more teams, I think, need to be a little more willing to do, because there's certain traits that you simply cannot teach. And that goes across all positions. But at quarterback in particular, you cannot teach the size. You cannot teach the athlete. And a lot of, there's certain things you can tweak in terms of becoming a better passer. But in terms of arm talent and the ability to throw from multiple arm slots, the ability to drive the ball downfield, you cannot teach that. And so I think that offensive staff and Billy Napier, they said, well, you know what? If we can clean up his mechanics and the beauty of it too, right, is they believed in the kid. And I think DJ and his family, they made that part easy. And so I think really you were just betting on, hey, can we clean this kid up mechanically? Do you think we can see improvements in him mechanically? And I believe he did that on his own from junior to senior year. And, let's say he didn't. Let's say he still put up those similar numbers to his junior year and maybe they didn't win as many games. He's still a guy that down the line, if you get a year with him, 2 years with him at the college level, he still could have turned out to be this guy. We just saw it a little earlier than everyone else did.
Is there a quarterback out there that's played that you could compare him to that the Gator fans would be like, okay, I remember that guy. I see this. I mean, I know we didn't talk about this before.
No, you're fine. It's tough. I think he's a unique specimen in terms of size, speed, arm strength. The guy that he sort of reminds me of off the top of my head is a guy like Russell Wilson in terms of skill set and ability and projectability to what his game will translate to at the next level, right? This is a guy that can truly win games with his arm and his legs. You saw a lot of that, especially early on in Russell Wilson's career. He was a dynamic runner in between the tackles, as a scrambler, outside the pocket, making things happen. But he also has a phenomenal baseball background, right? And that's something that we talked about with DJ Lagway, the ability to play with multiple arm slots, the ability to make things happen off platform and sort of create plays that didn't exist. I think, outside the size, of course, I think, I would say Lagway, I think, has got like 3 or 4 inches on Russell Wilson, but the skill set and the athletic ability are borderline identical.
Cody, I could have saved you some trouble there. You should have just said, he's a combination of Cam Newton, Joe Montana, and Tim Tebow. I think they would have liked that. All
sure.
Right, let's get on to the next subject. And again, we're joined by Cody Bellaire, On3 national scout. He's on our rankings team. He's one of the main guys on the rankings team. And sorry, I'm getting it. It never fails. You get phone calls right in the middle of things.
Totally get it.
Cody, you've got look, he's not the only guy. DJ Lagway's not the only guy in the class you like. You like a bunch of guys. So let's get on to the next subject, and that is 3 other Gator signees that you really like. Give us a few guys that off the top of your head, from an evaluation standpoint, you worked at colleges. Who do you love?
Yeah. So to me, there's 3 players I really wanted to touch on because I felt that they all had their own unique paths in this recruiting cycle for us during the evaluation process. Of course, every player is different. But we have our criteria and our methodology that sort of makes up our ranking process. But these 3 guys in particular all had sort of different paths to reaching this like 4-star status. And I wanted to start with a guy like Amir Jackson. Amir Jackson is a dominant athlete, right? Especially when you consider the frame and room to physically develop. He's a total beast on the basketball court. Averaged a double-double in points and blocks throughout his high school career. Easy dunker, can go up and slam it down, no problem. He's nearly 6'5", 225 pounds with freakish length, right? Like he's got 34-inch arms and a 6'8" wingspan, which undoubtedly helps with his catch radius. But when you watch the film, the 2 things that stick out to me the most are his body control and explosiveness. You can really see that basketball skill set translate to the football field in his hip mobility, his balance, his ability to go up and attack the football like it's a rebound off the backboard. And all that stuff translates to the next level. And the sheer explosiveness he possesses when he sticks his foot in the ground and cuts up field or high points the football. I mean, he's nearly a 21-foot long jumper as well. So you can see that dynamic ability show up on the football field too. And to me, his story is just one of upside and projectability. He'll need to add 15, 20 pounds at the next level, but his frame can carry that no problem.
We're talking about, just so anybody that might have missed the first part, 4-star tight end signing that's played receiver in high school, never played tight end.
Correct. And that's part of the deal, right? He'll need to refine his route tree and ability as a blocker at the next level, but he has the athleticism and the physical traits in order to make those changes. And I think his best football is ahead of him.
All right. That's one guy. You got 2 more here. You got some good ones for us. This is a good class. Who else?
Absolutely. Yeah, the next thing I wanted to touch on was Aaron Chiles, right? This is somebody that has the physical build and the body type to step on the field right now, right? He's a 6'3", 225-pound guy and is going to be one of the first dudes off the bus, even as a freshman in college. His story is one that's more of the ready-made guys coming out of high school. He's not someone that you really need to project long-term to really see how he develops from a physical standpoint, or a guy that needs to adjust to the speed of a game. This is a player that comes from a prestigious program that's pumped out college players in Good Counsel High School in Maryland. He's got the physicality and violence in his game to step in and have a role as soon as he arrives on campus. He's been asked to play as a space player who can drop in his own coverage. He's been asked to be a free blitzer from the middle linebacker position, or even as an extra rusher off the edge. And he's actually played meaningful snaps as a true inside linebacker, which is sort of slowly but surely becoming more and more rare these days with backer prospects coming out of high school. But the benefit that comes from taking a lot of reps at the inside backer position is that you're actually developing the ability to diagnose and key what offenses are doing from your future position. The ability to trigger to the football and beat opposing offenses to their spots is what makes dominant linebackers dominant. And he's one of the few guys now coming out of high school that actually knows how to do that at a high level coming into college. So he's one of the higher floor guys, in my opinion, in this Florida class. And I think he'll be a mainstay on this Florida defense throughout his career.
Yeah, I agree with that. I love him. His explosion on film. And again, I'm not an evaluator. You are, but boy, he just...
Dude, you nailed it, though. You nailed it.
Made a point B, just, All right, third guy, Marcus Mascoll. Now, this is a guy, Cody, that has not gotten a lot of love from fans, from people like me.
Sure.
His brother played at Clemson on the defensive line. He's an offensive guard / tackle from, I think, South Gwinnett High School in the metro Atlanta area, Snellville. All right, you like him a lot. Florida beat out LSU. To land him. So tell me about why should Florida people like this guy?
Yeah, he's interesting. And it's funny. You actually nailed it in terms of the versatility. I think that's one of the better skill sets he has. And I'll touch on that here because he's an interesting one. You know, he was one that slowly but surely grew on us as time went on. And he was a huge senior evaluation for us. His profile was one where we sort of kept telling ourselves, if you can just pop on film just enough, I think we might have something here, because the athletic profile and the body type were excellent, right? He's just a hair under 6'5", 295 pounds, and he's got awesome length. I mean, 35-inch arms, 6'9" wingspan is more than doable along the offensive line. And he has the movement skills to match too, which made him somebody that we felt could really play all 5 positions along the offensive line at the next level. And he's a guy that ran the 100-meter for his high school team on the track, but he also threw 45 foot in the shot put. So he has the size, he has the athleticism, and he's got the power. So why couldn't we see that on film, right? The junior film didn't necessarily show those skills translating to the football field. And then the senior film comes out and we're like, finally, there's the kid that we were waiting for. He showed so much more violence to his game. He was finishing blocks. And we were just waiting for this switch to flip for him, and it finally did. So I think he's a guy that could play early on along the interior and could eventually make his way out to tackle as he develops and gets more comfortable in pass pro. But for us, it was just about turning that switch, and I think we finally saw it as a senior.
Well, that'll make Florida fans happy, Cody, because obviously you're going to win and lose games in the SEC along the offensive and defensive lines, and quite frankly, Florida just isn't there right now. I mean, when you watch them – line up. When you look at the Alabamas and Georgias of the world, you're seeing different types of guys, and maybe he can be one of those types of guys for Florida. All right, last subject, On3 national scout, Cody Bellaire. All right, one sleeper Gators signee to watch, and I think you're going to go with the guy that I went with yesterday as a guy who can outperform his ranking. Well, I don't say that yet because some guy on our message board, one of our better posters, kind of ripped into me and said, no, you're dead wrong on him. He can't play.
Oh, man.
But look, I tell people opinions vary, Cody. College staffs are wrong a lot. I mean, otherwise everybody would be a starter and they're not. And so
no question. But
who is the guy you like and why, and what position does he play?
Yeah, so for me, that guy's Josiah Davis, right? Safety prospect. I think there's a lot of things that start adding up when you look at Josiah Davis's profile, right? The athleticism, the physicality, the body type. It makes me want to believe in what he can be in the future. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we talk about, especially in our profession, especially for teams. It's not what he looks like right now. It's what he can look like in the future. And safety is one of those positions too, where in order to be successful, I think you need to be good to great in at least 2 of 3 phases, right? Zone coverage, man coverage, run support. The film is, as a senior, was solid. And I think he's strong in run support. He showed some of that, but we were hoping for more, especially in terms of coverage ability. However, this is a guy who's nearly 6'1", 185 pounds with a 6'5" wing. So he's got great length. He ran 11.2 in the 100 as a junior, which is solid. It's not great, but it's definitely good in terms of defensive back. So the athletic ability is there. He's a former basketball player, 2-way starter for his high school at quarterback and safety. So he sees the game from both sides of the field, and he's willing to stick his face into traffic. And he's a physical box player. Like, he's a violent player coming downhill. So there's a lot of boxes you start checking when you sort of run through the list and things start adding up, and you sit there and say, man, I could actually see this cat panning out, especially if he could develop his technique in the back half. So I think there's certain things we would have loved to have seen more on film, like the cover skills and the ability to mirror and man coverage. But the athletic traits, the movement skills in the film, when the ball's in his hands at quarterback and these other sports really make me believe that he's capable of doing it, even though you don't necessarily see him do it on film right now. He's got a real shot, I think, as he learns more the nuances of the position when he gets to the college level.
See, Cody, I was thinking, again, sometimes we can overevaluate this thing, but the fact that he's playing multiple positions, once he gets to concentrate just on safety, you've got that. He's just a safety. But also, I liked him down in the box. I liked him getting physical.
Yeah.
Cody, you worked in the SEC, man. These Florida defenses the last decade, this is not what people were used to 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. The unbelievable physicality of the Florida defenses of old have been missing. I feel like this is a guy who can bring some of that. You know, how many times have you turned on a Florida game the last few years, Cody? And again, you competed against Florida and seen wide receivers just like, defensive backs like turnstiles, just letting guys run right by him, arm tackles. He doesn't strike me as the arm tackle type.
No, not at all. And I think it's funny too, with his body type, it's sort of interesting. You look at sort of what, and I sort of touched on it when talking about Aaron Chiles. There's not a lot of players, especially that end up panning out at linebacker that just played pure linebacker out of high school. And I think that's a testament to the athletic ability that is required to play that position. And to be honest, when we're talking about a guy like Josiah Davis, there's a world, especially with his length and his frame, he could add on, I don't know, 25, 30 pounds. Like, who's to say? And he could potentially walk himself down into a linebacker or sort of that hybrid hang defender position. You know, it just kind of depends. You usually sort of set your defense to your personnel. And he's a guy that I think with his body type and the athletic ability and his willingness to play downhill and be physical and get his head across and sort of knock guys out, there's a world in which he's a dominant box defender, whether that's as a safety or a linebacker. You never know what he could turn into. That's sort of the fun with this.
Interesting. Oh, you heard it here first. Cody Bellaire, On3 National Scout. He's predicting multiple national titles for Florida to come in the next couple of years. Cody, thank you very much. We're going to get you on a lot more. We appreciate your insight, intel. You know, obviously, you know the lay of the land in the SEC on the field and also from an evaluation and organizational institutional standpoint. So, again, we appreciate you having you come on. Excuse me. For Cody Bellaire, On3 National Scout, I am Keith Niebuhr of Gators Online. This was Talking Gators Recruiting. Thank you so much. We'll do it again soon. Take care, everybody.
Appreciate it, Keith.